Not too long ago, Virgin Orbit executives were in New York celebrating its public stock dividend. Recently, it has filed for bankruptcy protection in the U.S. after last-ditch efforts to find funding. This came less than a week after the company announced it was laying off 85% of its workforce, leaving only about 100 employees to run the remaining operations while it looks for a deep-pocketed buyer. This process allows the business to keep operating and resolving its financial issues while protecting creditors owed money.
Virgin Orbit, the satellite launch firm tied to British billionaire Richard Branson, failed to secure the funding needed to keep operating and has filed for bankruptcy.
The satellite launch company was formed as part of space tourism business Virgin Galactic, which transported Richard Branson into sub-orbital flight in 2021, 9 days ahead of his billionaire rival, Jeff Bezos. Virgin Orbit was spun off from Virgin Galactic in 2017 to focus on satellite launches rather than human launches. The company launches satellites into orbit with rockets launched from the Cosmic Girl, a modified Boeing 747 plane that flies the LauncherOne rocket up to altitude before releasing it for its astral ascent, and in late 2021 rode a wave of investor enthusiasm into a merger with a cash shell that listed its shares on New York's Nasdaq stock exchange. It became one of only a few U.S. rocket companies to successfully launch a privately developed launch vehicle into orbit. Since 2020, it has launched 6 missions, with 4 successes and 2 failures, using an ambitious and technically difficult process known as air launch, which employs a modified 747 jet to drop a rocket mid-flight and send small satellites into space.
Gentlemen, congratulations.
Thank you very much. It's been a wonderful, wonderful day. And congratulations to the whole Virgin Orbit team and Virgin Orbit today going into orbit, traveling at 17,500 miles an hour and just dropping off 7 satellites successfully into the right positions around the Earth.
The company touts its flexible and responsive launch system, which has placed national security, commercial, and international satellites into orbit. In 2019, Branson stated that Virgin Orbit could replace satellites for the United States Air Force in 24 hours. However, this was insufficient for Virgin Orbit to raise the anticipated $483 million in a 2021 SPAC deal. According to a statement, the merger raised $228 million in gross proceeds. This was due to an unusually high rate of shareholder redemptions. Due to high shareholder redemptions, Virgin Orbit raised less than half of the nearly $500 million expected when it closed its SPAC deal, shortening its runway. With the broader markets turning against riskier yet unprofitable assets, such as many new space stocks, Virgin Orbit shares began to fall steadily, limiting the company's ability to raise significant outside investment. In 2017, Branson's space tourism company, Virgin Galactic, spun off Virgin Orbit. They are both part of the Virgin Group. Unlike SpaceX, Virgin Orbit launches its LauncherOne rocket into space aboard Cosmic Girl, a modified Virgin Atlantic Boeing 747. The rocket, which is filled with small satellites, is strapped beneath the plane's wing and is released when the plane reaches 35,000 feet in altitude. The spacecraft then accelerates into orbit, delivering the satellites. Virgin Orbit has had 4 successful missions out of 6 launches since its inception. Each air launch with LauncherOne, which is not fully reusable, costs approximately $12 million. The Boeing 747, on the other hand, is reusable. Branson and the Virgin Group have invested more than $1 billion in Virgin Orbit, including $60 million since November 2022. This funding was insufficient to offset the significant headwinds and liquidity challenges that Virgin Orbit continues to face. Given the company's quarterly burn rate of around $50 million, Virgin Orbit aimed for profitability once it surpassed a launch rate, or cadence, of 12 missions per year. At the same time, Virgin Orbit was already in deep financial trouble, with a total deficit of $821 million at the end of 2021 as a result of consistent losses since its inception. While Virgin Orbit had hoped to launch 7 missions last year, that number has steadily declined quarter after quarter, with the company ending 2022 with just 2 completed launches, the same as the previous year. They made matters worse by ordering materials carelessly. The company might buy enough expensive items with short shelf lives to build a dozen or more rockets, but only build 2, resulting in the waste of millions of dollars in raw materials.
In January, the company tried to launch from Britain, and the launch was not successful. The rocket and 9 satellites fell to Earth. Those satellites belonged to Britain, to the United States, to other countries, and this was a big failure, and it was a big deal.
Virgin Orbit has launched the majority of its rockets from its headquarters in California. In May 2020, the company launched its first mission, but the rocket failed on the way to space. The second mission, in January 2021, was Virgin Orbit's first successful launch, with the rocket launching 10 small satellites for NASA into orbit. Following this, Virgin Orbit completed 3 missions, 1 in 2021 and 2 in 2022. With the launch frequency decreasing, excitement was high for Virgin Orbit's 6th mission in January 2023. It was to be the United Kingdom's first orbital space launch from British soil. The Boeing took off from Spaceport Cornwall in Newquay and successfully dropped LauncherOne at a high altitude. However, Virgin Orbit triumphantly declared that its rocket had successfully reached orbit. Minutes later, Virgin Orbit admitted the rocket had in fact suffered an anomaly. While blasting towards space at 11,000 miles per hour, the rocket failed and crashed back into the Atlantic Ocean. Virgin Orbit has attempted to raise funds from investors in the aftermath of its failed UK launch. Matthew Brown, a Texas-based investor, was in talks to invest $200 million in Virgin Orbit, but the talks fell through. Branson owns 75% of Virgin Orbit and is the majority shareholder, but he did not want to fund the company further. Instead, he started hedging his 75% equity stake with a series of debt rounds. Because of this debt, the flashy British billionaire has first priority over Virgin Orbit assets in the event of the company's impending bankruptcy. As the financial situation of the company got worse, some investors wondered why the search for a deal was taking so long. According to one investor, Virgin Orbit could quickly raise $10 million to $15 million to bridge the gap until it can find a larger buyer. Another investor estimated that Virgin Orbit had about $270 million in net tangible assets, adding to the appeal of a wholesale deal despite the company's plummeting market value. With stiff competition and a recent drop in the stock market valuations of unprofitable companies, investors appear to have been hesitant to invest the tens of millions of dollars required for Virgin Orbit to continue operations. While Branson personally contributed more than $70 million over the last 4 months to help keep the company afloat, and $1 billion in total, the company was eventually forced to announce at the end of March that it was laying off the majority of its roughly 800 employees, the majority of whom were laid off on Monday of this week. Virgin Investments announced that it would provide $31.6 million to Virgin Orbit to allow it to continue operations while it attempts to sell its assets. Virgin Orbit stated that it intended to pay its suppliers and vendors to the greatest extent possible, and that it was committed to working with customers to find a buyer capable of continuing to meet their needs. However, in the midst of recent turmoil, Virgin Orbit announced last week that it would be laying off 85% of its workforce. The company was also closing its doors for the foreseeable future, and it was on the verge of bankruptcy. Virgin Orbit listed assets of approximately $243 million and total debt of $153.5 million as of September 30, 2022 in a copy of the company's bankruptcy filing. Virgin Orbit would be able to continue operations while attempting to restructure its debts under Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. We have reached the end of our video. Please show your support for the channel by subscribing so that we can reach the 1,000 subscriber mark. It will really mean a lot. Thank you for your time.